They thought they had me cornered, a tired old man in his own house. They thought one temporary stay, a few forms, and a little talk about guardianship would be enough. They were sure the game was already over. What they didn't know, the night I pressed play on a message I wasn't meant to hear, their plan started to fall apart. That was the moment the story turned. Not the end, just the start of a fight they never saw coming. My name is Leonard Brooks. Folks call me Lenny. I'm 68, black, born in Savannah, raised most of my life in Atlanta. For 39 years I worked the city bus depot, grease in my cuticles, diesel in my clothes. I could hear a bus cough from across the yard and tell you which belt was slipping. I'm a widower, and I have one son, Marcus. For Marcus, I took every extra shift they'd hand me. I sold my daddy's watch and my own small record collection. Yes, including that Sam Cooke LP my father swore I'd pass down to a grateful son. I passed something down, all right. Tuition checks, rent, food, the kind of help you don't write down because it's love. When Marcus called, I was rinsing my coffee mug. "Pop, we need a place for a bit," he said. "Just till we get steady again, me and Tasha." His voice was too fast. My heart answered before my head. "Of course, come home." They came that weekend with boxes and tired smiles. Tasha hugged me like a nurse does, polite, quick, already moving on. "We'll keep everything organized," she said, and within an hour there was a plastic pill case on my counter and a printed schedule taped to the fridge. "It's just better this way," she added like I'd asked. Marcus took my spare keys, so we don't lock ourselves out, and asked me to show him my banking app, in case we need to pay a bill while you're out, Pop. I didn't argue. Why would I? We were family, and family helps. Little things changed first. My phone wasn't where I left it. My keys moved from the bowl by the door to a new hook labeled Shared. My favorite photograph, Marcus at graduation, cheeks bright, cap crooked, vanished from the mantel. I put it away so it wouldn't get dusty, Tasha said. She spoke to me in steps and reminders. "Take your pills, Lenny. Don't forget your water. You said you were tired, right?" The way she said my name sounded like a password she owned. Marcus filled the rooms with plans. "Once we get caught up, we'll help with the house, Pop. Maybe adjust your bills. Maybe even refinance so we're all good." He said we and our more and more. Our house, our accounts, our future. When did just for a while become, this is ours now? I didn't ask. I listened. They started forgetting to tell me about packages they signed for, mail they opened, calls they took on my landline. And then came new words at the edge of my hearing. Guardianship. Unsafe to live alone. Power of attorney. I'd walk past the hall and hear my name in a whisper, followed by a laugh that didn't fit in my kitchen. One afternoon, I turned the corner and found a tidy stack of papers on the dining table. "It's just a standard thing," Marcus said, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Makes things simple. You won't have to worry about bills or legal stuff. We'll handle it." He tapped the first page and slid a pen toward me. I picked up the paper and read my name at the top, then a cluster of terms I knew enough to respect. "Later," I said as kindly as I could. "I still like reading my own life." He chuckled like I'd made a joke. "Maybe you're thinking, why didn't I throw them out the first week? Why not call a lawyer right then? Because love makes you slow to accuse. Because I kept telling myself I was tired, not foolish. Because I wanted to believe my son would not harm me. So I waited and I watched. The signs got louder. Tasha reset the password on the Wi-Fi and gave me a new one without meeting my eyes. "House rules," she said. Marcus started taking my car to save on gas, then came home with a receipt I'd never seen and a story that didn't add up. He talked fast, like the words were chasing each other. His phone was never far from his hand. When it lit up, he would step outside. I wasn't alone in seeing it. Miss Jacqueline from next door knocked one morning with a bag of peaches and a look that said she remembered me before all this. "You okay, Mr. Brooks?" she asked. "You haven't been at church." I told her I was fine. She didn't believe me, but she let me save face. "You call me if you need anything," she said, and squeezed my hand like a promise. Later that week, I went to the garage to check the slow leak in my left rear tire and found Tasha's cousin Darnell already there, poking at my toolbox like he owned time. "I'm just helping," he said. He called me Unc, like we shared a bloodline. His grin was loose. "We'll get you set up real safe, Unc," he added. "New locks, new papers, less stress." Safe, papers, locks. Words meant to sound kind. Why did they feel like a closing door? At night, I would sit in my old chair and study the quiet. An engine tells you everything if you listen to the gap between sounds, the catch, the drag, the same wrong beat every time. Houses talk the same way. The new quiet was wrong. It kept telling me, "You are being managed. You are being moved." What did they think I was? Too slow to notice? A man who spent 40 years hearing faults in metal can hear a lie in his own kitchen. Still, I didn't confront them. Not yet. I cleaned my mug. I watered my plants. I told stories about the depot to a room that wasn't really listening. And I waited for whatever this was to show me its true face. It tried to, one night, in plain sight. I was walking down the hall toward my bedroom and stopped because I heard my name. The voices were low, sharp. Marcus, Tasha. A word I had hoped I'd misheard before came again, clearly this time. Guardianship. "He forgets stuff," Marcus said. "We can use that visit from the clinic. Remember the note? It's enough." My chest went tight. They kept talking. They used my house like a meeting room where I wasn't invited. I stood still and let their words settle on me like dust. I didn't sleep much after that. I made tea in the dark and watched the streetlight throw a thin silver line across the table where those papers had sat. Where do you draw a line with your own child? When does "help me" turn into "hand it over"? Was I imagining it all because I was scared to age? Or was I finally awake? The next morning, I tried something small. I moved my keys back to the bowl by the door. That evening, they were on the Gerd hook again. I left my phone on the mantel while I went to the bathroom. When I came back, it was a few inches to the left. Not much. Enough. Tasha called through the hall. "We're ordering dinner, Mexican or Thai." Like nothing was happening at all. I picked Thai. I ate 3 bites and tasted nothing. A day later, something inside me clicked the way a fixed engine does. Quietly, once, and then everything hums true. I was standing at the sink, rain starting outside, when my phone buzzed with a new voice message. The sender's name made my stomach go cold. It was Marcus. A second later, another text came in. "Pop, wrong chat. Don't play that." I stared at the screen, at my own name and his warning, at the gray triangle of the play button. I didn't press it yet. You can learn a lot from waiting one extra breath, from asking yourself, right before the moment, what kind of man you want to be when the moment passes. I set the phone on the counter. I dried my hands. And I told the empty kitchen, out loud, "If this is what I think it is, we're done pretending." They thought they were ready for whatever came next. They thought my slowness was weakness. They never asked themselves what happens when a man who has kept buses running for a lifetime decides to tune his own house the same way. Then I pressed play. I pressed play. Marcus's voice slid into my kitchen, calm like a man reading a grocery list. "Yeah, babe, we should move quicker. The clinic note is enough. We say he forgets the stove, gets turned around, whatever. File for guardianship, sign the house while he's still cooperative. Darnell knows a guy to push the paperwork. A week, maybe 2. Then we find him a bed in that cheap place off the highway. After that, we're done babysitting." There was a soft laugh. His, not hers. I can't wait to be out of this. The old man's a handful. I stood there with the rain ticking the window and something in me going very, very still. You know the stillness before a bus engine settles into the right idle? That was me. No shouting, no broken plates. Just a quiet lock clicking inside. I didn't reply to his "don't play that" text. I slid the message to a folder, forwarded it to my email, saved it to the cloud, then to a tiny thumb drive I kept in a coffee can with stray bolts. I wrote filter screws on the lid so no one would be curious. Then I sat down with a pen and made a list. Keep copies, don't sign, observe, act. At the bottom, I wrote a name I hadn't said out loud yet: help. At 9 the next morning, I took a slow walk next door with a basket of peaches I didn't need to return. Miss Jacqueline opened her door before I knocked. "You look like a man who slept with his shoes on," she said. I handed her the basket and told her I needed a number, for legal aid, for whatever department helped older folks when family stopped acting like family. She didn't ask for details. She went to a drawer and came back with 3 cards, each underlined in blue pen. "Call the first one," she said. "If they're busy, call the second. If you need someone to sit with you while you talk, I have time." The first line led me to a woman named Monique Harris, an elder law attorney with a voice made for bad news and good plans. I told her what I had. "Do not confront them yet," she said. "Back up everything. Start a log, dates, times, what's said, what's moved, what's missing. Keep your normal routine. If they push papers, stall politely. If they talk about safety, ask them to write down specifics. We'll need details." "And Mr. Brooks?" "Yes, ma'am. From now on, your phone is a notebook. Voice memos, photos. Do not hide devices in places that can get you hurt, but if someone brags where you can hear it, let your phone do its job." I walked back through my own front door and wore the mask they had chosen for me. I moved a little slower. I asked what day it was even when I knew. I let Tasha speak to me like I was a checklist she controlled. The more I shrank, the more they grew careless. That afternoon, Tasha clicked her way into the dining room in her gray suit and laid out a neat stack of papers like a dealer in a game she expected to win. "It's all standard, Lenny," she said, flipping to tabs. "Power of attorney, emergency medical authorization, permission to manage the house just while we stabilize your routine." "I should find my glasses," I said. "They're right there," Marcus answered from the doorway. He was smiling too hard. "Then I should make tea," I said. I stood up slow, shuffled to the stove, let the kettle take its time. Steam gave me minutes. When I sat back down, I pointed at a paragraph and read a line aloud, dull and wrong, like a man who needed guiding. Tasha leaned over to help and said the words I wanted recorded. "This gives us authority to sign on your behalf if you become incompetent or unwilling to handle complex tasks." I nodded like that made sense, then patted my pockets. "Tea makes me need the bathroom," I said like an apology, and left the papers cooling in the draft from the hallway. In the bathroom, I turned on the fan. In the mirror, I looked older than my last birthday. Not weaker, just older. I sent Monique a photo of the first page with my name and the POA language. She wrote back fast, "Do not sign. Log the attempt. We'll talk at 3. Back at the table, I said my head hurt and I'd look later. Tasha made a tight smile, the kind people make when the vending machine ate their dollar. "Of course," she said, and stacked the papers with a little slap, like my name had misbehaved. Darnell showed up around 5 with a toolbox. "Unc, we're checking smoke detectors," he said, too cheerful. He winked at Marcus. "Why does a man wink when he's testing batteries? Because he thinks he's clever in a room that's his." I told him the garage light flickered and asked if he could look. He swaggered ahead. That's the thing about men like Darnell. They walk like a story is telling itself in their favor. In the garage, I set my phone on the shelf between jars of bolts and a paper towel roll. Screen off, mic on. I dragged a chair over. "You know, Darnell," I started, soft. "I've been thinking about all this. Maybe it's too much for me now. What do you think?" He grinned like I'd handed him a key. "Unc, that's exactly what we've been saying. You chill, let us run it. Marcus got a plan with the courthouse lady. It's not even hard. You sign one thing. Well, we sign for you now if needed. And poof, no more mail, no more bills. You get meals, nurses. They even got bingo. What about the house? He shrugged bigger than his shirt. Paperwork. For now, we put it under him and Tasha so nothing gets messed up. Then later we can sell if needed. You won't even feel it. In a month, you'll be thanking us." "Guess that clinic note helps," I said, fishing. He laughed. "Man, that note was clutch. Mild cognitive issues, you remember? Boom, that's the magic word. Judges don't have time. They see that and stamp. Marcus said he can't do another month of this. I feel him." I nodded like a man hearing about weather. "You boys thought of everything." He tapped the light fixture with a screwdriver, and the flicker stopped. "We really did," he said, and for a second the garage was too quiet, like the house had sucked in a breath to fit every word on a recording. That night, after they went to bed, I sat in my chair with my phone plugged in and listened to Darnell's own voice put nails in his future. I saved the file next to Marcus's message, then copied both to the thumb drive. I started the log Monique had asked for. Dates, times, words I could quote. Tasha attempted to obtain signature on POA. Language included incompetency clause. Darnell described plan to transfer title for now and later sell. Marcus referred to clinic note as magic word. Simple, plain. Engines don't need poetry to run. They need torque and timing and clean records. At 3, Monique called. She didn't waste sentences. "You're doing well," she said. "Do not change your routine. Expect them to push harder if you stall. If they mention guardianship again, ask who told them it was necessary and why. Let them say it on their own. Also, Mr. Brooks, from this point forward, if they raise voices or isolate you, you call me. And if anyone touches you or tries to move you against your will, you call 911 first, then me." "What about the clinic note?" I asked. "I don't have memory problems." "Sometimes a single line can be twisted," she said. "One sentence does not make you incompetent. Guardianship is serious and courts don't like misuse, but people try. Your recordings matter. Your log matters more. We're building a picture." I thanked her and hung up to find Marcus leaning in the doorway like he'd been standing there a century. "Talking to anyone I should know about?" he asked, too sweet. "My insurance," I lied. "They put me on hold. Made me grumpy." He chuckled and stepped in. "We're all trying to help you, Pop. You just have to let go a little. You did your part for years. Time to relax." "Relax," I repeated and let the word sit between us like a third person who didn't like either of us much. Over the next days, the house changed its shape around me. Tasha moved my pill case to a high shelf so visitors don't bump it. Marcus took my car again and came back with a new dent and no explanation I believed. Darnell installed a chain on the front door for safety and kept the spare key on his ring. When I asked for it, he laughed. "Unc, you just lose it." I smiled and asked him to check the smoke detector in the back bedroom. While he climbed a chair, I took a photo of his ring with my phone and later zoomed in until the teeth of my own key stared back at me like a little steel warning. I kept moving at their pace, and they kept talking as if I had no ears. I heard Tasha on the phone with someone from a facility across the county line. Words like availability, transfer. He wanders sometimes. Marcus started using a tone I remembered from when he was 3 and wanted something sooner than bedtime. Fake, soft, hard underneath. "Sign this, Pop," he'd say, tapping. "Let me take care of you." "How long do you think this will take?" I asked one night, looking at the papers like a man looks at a storm cloud that refuses to rain. He smirked at Tasha. "Not long," he said. "We're almost there." Almost there. Where is there when your own child draws the map? I didn't flinch. I set another place at the table the next evening and put a pie in the oven that smelled like summers we used to have. "Family dinner tomorrow," I said, bright as a light that never burned out. 6 o'clock. Tasha narrowed her eyes a hair. "What's the occasion?" "Being a family," I said and smiled like it was true. Later, I went to my room, closed the door, and made 2 calls. One to Monique. "Tomorrow 6. Be close." She said she would. The second to a number she'd given me for a detective who worked financial crimes against seniors. I didn't give a speech. I just said my name, told them I had recordings and documents, and that I'd call when the time was right. When I hung up, I looked around my room. The things I owned looked back. The folded flag from my brother's service, the chipped mug with the depot logo, the photo that had reappeared on the mantel after I found it in a box and put it back. I put the thumb drive in a sock at the bottom of my drawer and tucked a copy of my log into my Bible because even thieves hesitate with scripture. I lay down in a house that felt like a stage set. Walls can't keep promises, but they can hold sound. Tomorrow mine would hold more than usual. Would they see it coming? Would they smell the change in the air? Would Marcus recognize the look on my face, the one a man gets when he's about to take a wrecked engine apart and build it back right? They thought guardianship was a trick with easy steps. They forgot about the part where you have to look a person in the eye and prove they can't steer their own life. They forgot what I've done most of mine, keep things running when everyone else had already given up. I slept in bursts. Each time I woke, the same question whispered from the dark. When your child wants your house more than your hand, what is left to give? Morning would answer the only way it knows how, by arriving, ready or not. By 6 o'clock, my table would be set for more than dinner. They believed the hard part was done, that I was soft, that paperwork moves faster than a tired man's mind. They thought they were walking me to an easy ending. What they didn't know, the house was ready, the files were backed up, and 2 people they'd never met were listening for my call. This wasn't the end. It was the start of the part where the quiet man stops being quiet. I started early because normal makes people careless. Chicken in buttermilk. Pie crust chilling. Sweet tea sweating in a glass pitcher the way it did when Marcus was small and the world was simpler. While the kitchen worked, I worked the other side of the plan. The voice messages, Marcus's week or two, and Darnell's magic word, lived in 3 places now. My phone, the cloud, and a thumb drive tucked in a sock under folded shirts. A second copy sat in a sugar canister with the label turned to the wall. I wrote the day's date at the top of my log and added a clean page. Family dinner at 6 p.m. Set call with attorney and detective. Goal: keep everyone in one room. At 10, I called Monique from the back porch so the vent hood wouldn't carry my voice into the hall. "Phones pick up a lot of noise," she said. "We'll need them to say things clearly in the same room. Keep your routine. If they push, don't fight. Stall. When you're ready, call me and the detective, set the phones down, and leave the line open." "What about the door?" I asked. "You invite us after the recordings are played, not before," she said. "If they try to take you somewhere against your will, call 911 first. Otherwise, your kitchen is your courtroom." I hung up and took the trash out, because men who plan to win still take the trash out. Miss Jacqueline was watering her roses. "You need anything?" she asked without saying what she really meant. "If my porch light blinks twice, call this number," I said, and gave her the detective's card. "Don't come over, just call." She looked at me, the way people do when they're deciding whether to argue or to trust. She put the card in her pocket and nodded once. "I'll be home," she said. By noon, the house smelled like fried chicken and old summers. I wiped the counters twice. I checked the Bluetooth speaker and paired it with my phone, then unpaired it so no one would see its name pop up and ask why. I laid out 4 plates and 1 extra I didn't set, just stacked nearby like I'd miscounted. I put my phone charger under the lip of the table so I could set the phone face down on the wood and keep it alive with the line open. At 2, Tasha came home in her gray suit like she was arriving at a meeting someone else had already lost. "We should talk before dinner," she said, and placed a fresh stack of papers on the table. She always had more papers. She always called them standard. She slid her nail under a tab. "This one is just consent for a day program," she said lightly. "Gives you structure, social hours, Crafts. Her smile didn't touch her eyes. I read the first lines out loud as if I was guessing at big words. Transfer. Client. To. Residential. I stopped. Day program, huh? It's a template, she said quickly. All facilities use similar language. She turned pages like a dealer reshuffling a bad hand. No commitments yet. Then it can wait, I said. I don't commit on an empty stomach. She let out a small laugh that was not a laugh. Of course. 3:00 brought Darnell and his grin. He knocked, then walked in like the house answered to him. Unc, he shouted cheerfully. Heard you were cooking. You know I never say no to chicken. Check the stove first, I said. Flame's been odd. He leaned over the burners, flicked a knob, and for 1 second the blue ring flared wider than it should. You seen that? He asked, eyes bright. Dangerous. Good thing we're around. You forget sometimes. Maybe, I said, and snapped a photo of the knob on high with the time and date under it. When he turned away, I shot a second photo with the knob where I had left it. Low. Later, those two pictures would sit together in my log like a before and after no one could argue. Darnell wandered to the living room and tested the front door chain like he owned it. We should keep this locked, he said. Old folks get ideas about night walks. I sleep fine, I replied. That's what you say now, he answered like a man in a commercial. At 4, Marcus came in with the smell of a new cologne and the look of a man who believes his own story. Pop, you look good, he said, kissing the air near my cheek. His eyes ran along the counters, to the table, to the empty spot where he'd wanted the papers to sit. We're real close on the plan, he added low like we were teammates. Let's get this done clean. You won't have to worry about anything. I'm not worried, I said. Dinner at 6. He smirked. After dinner, then. He tapped the folder. You'll be relieved. I marinated the last batch of chicken and listened to them move around my house. Tasha on the phone in my bedroom, using the word availability, like she was shopping for a couch. Darnell taking a picture of my medicine labels for the calendar app. Marcus humming like a man who'd already spent money that didn't belong to him. At 5, I went to my room and closed the door. I took the thumb drive from the sock and moved it to the sugar canister. I put my log in the Bible and slid the Bible under the bed. I dialed Monique and the detective on 2 phones, one in each pocket to test the lines. We'll be 2 minutes away, the detective said. When you're ready, call and don't speak. We'll listen. If we hear a threat or restraint, we come in. If not, we wait for your word. My word will be, please pour the tea, I said. It was something I could say to my son without raising alarms. She repeated the phrase back to me and hung up. I looked at myself in the mirror. Men like me don't get heroes' faces. We get work faces. The kind you see in bus mirrors at 5 a.m. when the city is still dark. My hands were steady. I went back to the kitchen and finished what I'd started. At 5:40, Tasha came in and touched the papers one more time like they were lucky. I called a place, she said, bright and neat. They have a tour opening at 9 tomorrow. We can sign the short form after dinner and get you on the list. A tour, I repeated. Do I get to choose the room? Of course, she said quickly, then added, there aren't many options, but it's very safe. Do I get to keep my radio? She blinked, then smiled thin. We'll see. At 5:59, Marcus took the head of the table without being asked. Darnell sat at the side where my brother had sat at Christmas years ago, talking too loudly, tugging at the chain he'd installed like it was a medal he'd won. Tasha arranged her knife and fork straight and aligned, like she was preparing for surgery. Looks great, Pop, Marcus said. He reached for a drumstick, then paused over the folder like it was a salt shaker. After, okay? After, I agreed and set my phone face down near the pitcher. I slipped the charging cable to it and felt the tiny buzz as it caught. I lifted the pitcher. Before we dig in, I said, easy as summer, let me pour the tea. I stepped to the counter and, without looking like I was doing anything more than tending to dinner, tapped a contact and pressed call. The line opened. The screen went black. I set the phone back down on the table, close enough to catch the words, Far enough not to be a conversation piece. We served ourselves, plates filled. The first clink of silverware sounded too loud in my ears. I asked about Marcus's job. He had a story ready. I asked Tasha about her day. She had a better one. I asked Darnell about the smoke detector. He laughed and said, "All good, till you forget again." "Forget what?" I asked softly. "The stove," he said, smiling at Tasha like he'd scored a point. "We don't want any accidents." I nodded and let the words sit there. Marcus pushed his chair back a fraction and slid the folder toward me with 2 fingers. "Let's just sign the easy ones," he said, voice gentle the way water is gentle before it floods. "Easy ones," I echoed. "Tell me again what they do." He didn't hesitate. "Power of attorney, basic stuff. We can handle your bills. Medical consent, so we can talk to doctors. Authorization for a day program. That's good for you. Stability." "And the part where I'm incompetent?" I asked, looking at Tasha, not him. Tasha's smile thinned to a line. "Those are just definitions," she said. "Legal language. It's how the system works, Lenny." I picked up the top page. I didn't read it. I stared at my name printed under a line that wanted my signature, and I heard Marcus, my boy, say from 2 feet away, "Come on, Pop. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Harder than what? Than handing over the keys to my own life? Than letting a child I loved decide where I sleep and when I eat? The room held its breath. I put the papers down. "Before I sign anything," I said lightly, "let's start with something simple. A small listen. I want to play a message that came to me by mistake." Marcus's chair creaked. Tasha's hand stopped halfway to her glass. Darnell looked from one to the other, then back to me, grin wobbling. I reached under the lip of the table and clicked the Bluetooth on. The speaker in the corner woke with a soft tone no one noticed because it sounded like any other house sound. I scrolled to the saved file and set my thumb above the triangle that would make their own voices fill my kitchen. My other hand rested near the pitcher, over the phone that was carrying every breath to 2 people waiting outside. They thought they owned the room. They thought my house was a hallway to an ending they'd already planned. They didn't know the door they were about to walk through swung only one way. "Please," I said, smiling like a host, "pour the tea." The next sound that filled my kitchen didn't belong at a family table. It wasn't grace or a joke or the clink of a glass. It was my son's voice, clean and certain, explaining how to move me out of my own life. The look that crossed their faces then, shock first, then calculation, told me I was finally standing in the right part of my story. This wouldn't end with me signing anything. It would end with truth in the middle of my house. I tapped play. Marcus's words came from the speaker in the corner, louder than they had sounded in my head. "We should move quicker. The clinic note is enough. We say he forgets the stove, gets turned around. File for guardianship, sign the house while he's still cooperative. A week, maybe 2. Then we find him a bed in that cheap place off the highway. After that, we're done babysitting. Silence after that is a special thing. It tells you who someone really is." Marcus tried to smile. Tasha didn't. Darnell laughed once and then swallowed it like a bad pill. "That's out of context," Marcus said, already shaking his head. "Pop, I was venting. You know how I get when I'm stressed. We love you. We're trying to help." "Help," I repeated like a man tasting a word he might be allergic to. "Play the next one." The garage recording rolled. Darnell's voice, easy and proud. "Marcus got a plan with the courthouse lady. It's not even hard. You sign one thing. Well, we sign for you now if needed. And poof, no more mail, no more bills. For now, we put it under him and Tasha so nothing gets messed up. Then later we can sell if needed. You won't even feel it." That clinic note was clutch. "Mild cognitive issues. You remember? Boom. That's the magic word. Judges don't have time. They see that, and stamp, stamp. Marcus said he can't do another month of this." Tasha's hand moved toward the phone like it might jump off the table and bite her. "You can't record people without consent. she said, low and sharp. I asked a lawyer, I said. In my home, in a conversation I'm part of, I can record the words aimed at me. And I did. I kept my voice level. I saved them too, more than once. So if anyone gets the urge to break something tonight, it won't change anything. Darnell looked at the front door chain and then at me, as if measuring how fast he could reach either. Marcus put a palm flat on the folder like he could hold the night still. "You're confused," he said softly. "We've been worried about you. You left the stove on." I picked up my log and slid 2 photos across the table. Left is the knob on high, time-stamped at 3:07 p.m., while you all were here. Right is the knob where I left it, on low, time-stamped before that. I don't cook on high for chicken. Ask your mother's recipe if you remember it. I let my finger rest on the second photo. Somebody wanted a scare on the record. Tasha's cheeks tightened. "You're making stories out of accidents." "You're making accidents out of a life," I said. "That's the difference." Marcus leaned back and stared at the ceiling, the way he did as a teenager when I told him no, and he tried to count to 10 and make it mean something. "Okay," he said finally, voice careful. "Let's slow down. You're tired. We're all tired. The papers are just to make things smoother. If we did it clumsy, we're sorry. But you do need structure." "Structure," I said and looked around my kitchen, the one I'd built and fixed and kept. "Structure is good. Theft is not." The speaker was quiet now. The open call under the picture was not. Somewhere outside, a car door shut soft. The floor under our chairs felt different, like a new layer had been poured under it. I pushed the folder back to Marcus with one finger. "Read me the sentence where I give you the right to sell my house," I said. He didn't touch the folder. Tasha did. She flipped pages and chose a different one. "This is just medical consent," she said, tapping. "So we can speak on your behalf in emergencies. You want that. What if you fall?" "If I fall, you pick me up," I said. "You don't sell the floor." Darnell couldn't hold his tongue. "Man, come on," he burst, leaning forward. "This is for your own good. You don't even go to church anymore." I smiled a little at that. "I know who I pray to, Darnell, and he doesn't live in your calendar." Marcus's jaw worked. I saw the boy in him, the one who once cried when his toy broke because he loved it, and then tried to blame the toy for being cheap. He reached for a new angle. "You're not yourself lately," he said. "You forget dates. You repeat stories. That clinic note says—" "That clinic note says I was tired the day the nurse saw me," I cut in. "It says mild, and it says monitor. It doesn't say take his house. It doesn't say ship him off." I kept my gaze on him. "It also doesn't give you permission to use me like a step stool." No one moved. The sweet tea sweated on the wood like a witness. "Here's what happens next," I said softly. "Nothing violent, nothing dramatic. We finish dinner. Then we listen to one more recording. This one you haven't heard." I tapped the thumb drive bulge in my pocket and then set my hand flat on the table, palm open. "It's you, Darnell, in my garage naming the person at the courthouse who would push the paperwork. Names matter when they live on audio." Darnell's face emptied out in a blink. "You're bluffing." "You've mistaken quiet for empty your whole life," I said. "It's your worst habit." Tasha pressed her lips together until they went white. "We should call a lawyer," she said to Marcus. "I already did," I answered and motioned at the speaker. "She's listening." That landed. Even Darnell's shoulders dropped half an inch. Marcus's eyes snapped to the phone near the pitcher, then to the hallway, then to the front door. He was adding up exits and outcomes. He forgot to add me. "Don't get up," I said before he could stand. "If you put a hand on me or try to take my phone, the next knock on that door will be louder." "What door?" Darnell asked, scoffing. Right then, as if a stage manager had cued it, a soft, polite tap sounded from the front. Not a pound. A knock that assumed it would be answered. No one moved. "Probably Miss Jacqueline," Tasha tried. "She doesn't knock like that," I said. Marcus swallowed. His voice came out tight. "Pop? What did you do?" "What I should have done a long time ago," I said. "I told the truth to people whose job is to hear it." Tasha's eyes flashed. "This is still a family matter." "Family matters most," I said. "That's why it stops here." Another knock. A second, right behind it. Calm. Certain. I stood up. My knees didn't complain. I slid my chair back slowly, like there was all the time in the world. Because there was. For me. Marcus's chair scraped the floor. "Don't open it," he said, half standing, then sat again when he saw I wasn't shaking and the phone's black screen was still face down, patient as a witness. I walked to the door. My own hallway felt longer than usual. Brighter, too, like the house had opinions tonight and finally got to say them. My hand went to the chain Darnell had installed for safety. I took it off, gently, like unhooking a necklace. Before I opened the door, I looked back at my table, at the plates, at the folder, at the three faces that had lived in my house without really seeing the man who paid for its roof. Marcus had his hands in fists he thought were hidden under the table. Tasha was flat and cold and calculating, eyes flicking between possible futures. Darnell looked smaller than his voice for the first time since he stepped inside my garage. I opened the door. The hall filled with evening air in the shape of people who were not here for dinner. Their voices were steady. Their badges didn't need to be loud. My name sounded different when they said it, like it belonged to me again. "Good evening, Mr. Brooks," one of them said. "May we come in?" Behind me, chairs scraped, papers rustled. In front of me, I could feel the floor choose its side. I stepped back and held the door wide. "Please," I said. "Pour the tea." Badges in my doorway, steam rising from the tea. My son frozen with a drumstick in his hand. This is how truth walked into my house. It didn't shout. It didn't argue. It asked, calmly, to be let in. "Evening," the lead officer said, showing her ID. "Officer Carla Nguyen. We received a call. Is everyone all right?" "I invited you," I answered. My voice sounded steady, almost too steady to be mine. "Please come in." They stepped over the threshold like the floor belonged to facts. Monique Harris came in behind them, a notebook tucked under her arm, hair pulled back like a woman who had come for work, not a scene. She gave me one fast look that said, "I'm here," and then another that said, "Let it play." Marcus pushed his chair back 2 inches. "Who are all these people?" he asked, trying for casual, landing on thin. "My attorney," I said, nodding to Monique. "And officers who listen." Tasha lifted her chin. "This is a private dinner." "This is a private home," Monique said, polite as a librarian and sharp as a pin. "Mr. Brooks asked us to be here." Officer Nguyen's partner scanned the table. The folder, the neat stack of forms, my phone face down by the picture. "Is anyone hurt?" he asked. "Not tonight," I said, and pressed play again. Marcus's voice filled the room. Guardianship, quick signatures, a cheap place off the highway. Then Darnell's garage brag, magic word, stamp stamp, "We sign for you now." The officers didn't react. They didn't need to. They listened the way engines listen to oil. Absolutely, like survival depended on it. "That's not," Marcus started. "Is that your voice?" Officer Nguyen asked mildly. He shut his mouth, then opened it again. "It's out of context." "Is that your voice?" she repeated, same tone, like she was asking about the weather and already knew the answer. He hesitated long enough to answer without answering. Monique set her notebook on the table. "Mr. Brooks has also kept a log," she said. "Times, dates, attempts to obtain his signature on documents giving control of his finances and property, and language about moving him against his will. There are photographs of the stove knob adjusted to create forgetfulness. There are copies of the standard forms with clauses misrepresented as day program consent. We will be filing for an immediate protective order and notifying Adult Protective Services." Tasha's eyes narrowed. "Those recordings are illegal." In this state, Monique said, soft as cloth, a person may record a conversation they're part of, in their own home. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Mr. Brooks was very much a part of every conversation you had about him. Darnell stood up fast, chair legs scraping. I'm not sticking around for this. Please sit, Officer Nguyen said. Not a threat, a direction. Darnell sat. His grin had left 10 minutes ago and taken his courage with it. Marcus tried a new story. We were scared for him, he said, palms open, voice bending toward tears he hadn't earned. He leaves things on. He forgets. We were just... Fear doesn't need your father's deed, Monique said. Officer Nguyen looked at me. Mr. Brooks, do you want these individuals to leave your home tonight? I looked at my son, my boy who used to fall asleep in the back of my truck after Little League, head on my jacket, crumbs on his chin. I want my home back, I said. I want them out, and I want a record of why. The kitchen held that sentence like it had been waiting to hear it. Understood, Officer Nguyen said. She turned to Marcus and Tasha. You're being asked to leave. Before you do, we need to talk about what's been alleged. She spoke in careful squares, building a box around the evening. Attempted exploitation of an elder, coercion to sign legal documents, misuse of a medical note, discussions of moving Mr. Brooks against his will. We will be collecting statements. If you choose not to speak, that is your right. Exploitation? Marcus's voice cracked on the wrong syllable. He's my father. Exactly, Monique murmured. Tasha straightened her stack of papers, a reflex for control. We need to call our attorney, she said. You should, Monique replied. You should also stop contacting any clerk or friend at the courthouse your cousin has mentioned. Names like that become cases. Darnell's head snapped toward her. He didn't ask which name she meant. He didn't have to. Officer Nguyen's partner, a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes, set a plastic evidence bag on the table. We'll photograph the documents, he said. Do not touch them again. He glanced at my phone. Mr. Brooks, do you consent to us making a copy of the audio files tonight? Yes, I said, and slid the phone toward him. There's a backup, too. I reached for the sugar canister, turned the label toward the room, popped the lid, and lifted out the thumb drive. Darnell's mouth actually fell open. Sugar, I said, and handed the drive to Monique. Thank you, she said, sliding it into a padded envelope. She didn't smile, but her eyes warmed at the edges. Good hiding place. I've been organizing small parts a long time, I said. You learn where to put the ones that matter. Miss Jacqueline's porch light blinked twice through my front window. I didn't turn to look. The promise had done its job. The next minutes moved with a hard, quiet rhythm. The officers photographed the folder, my log, the stove knob pictures. They asked short questions with long answers baked into them. Did anyone pressure you to sign? Did anyone threaten to move you? Did anyone access your accounts without consent? I answered in pieces, careful as sockets on a bolt. Yes, yes. Here are times. Here are amounts. Here is how I know. Marcus tried to laugh. I recognized the sound from when he was 9 and denied breaking a window while the ball lay at his feet. Pop, he said, leaning forward. It was temporary. You know we'd never. You already did, I said. Not with a pen, with a plan. Tasha tried to pivot back to pity. Lenny, you've been tired. You said it yourself. We were trying to help. If help needs my silence, I said, it's not help. Officer Nguyen nodded once, like a mechanic hearing a fix he agrees with. Okay, she said, and her voice lowered a half step. Marcus Brooks, Tasha Pierce Brooks, Darnell Carter, based on what we have tonight and the recordings provided, we're detaining you for questioning in connection with attempted elder exploitation and related offenses. She spoke a phrase I'd only ever heard on TV, and it sounded different here, smaller and heavier. She explained rights with the same calm she'd brought through my door. Marcus's face broke in a way I didn't recognize. He looked at me like he wanted me to pull a rabbit out of a hat I'd never owned. "Pop, please." I thought a long time before I answered. Mercy isn't the same as surrender. Forgiveness isn't a key to my front door. "You can call me when you're ready to tell the truth," I said, and felt how true it was. Not before. They didn't go out in cuffs, banging and shouting. That's for movies and men who want to look tough. The officers did it the way they do when they care about what happens next. Firm, precise, no show needed. The door closed behind them, and my house exhaled. Silence came back different. It wasn't the kind that made you feel small. It was the kind that made room. Monique and I sat at the table with the cooling chicken and the folder we didn't need to touch anymore. She clicked her pen and then didn't write anything for a moment. "You did well," she said. "I feel like I just lifted an engine out of a frame by hand," I said, and let out a breath that had been living in me for weeks. "That's what this is," she replied. "Heavy work that leaves the right kind of emptiness." "What happens next?" I asked, not because I didn't know some of it, but because I wanted to hear a future said aloud. "Tonight," she said, "you sleep. Tomorrow we file for a temporary protective order. We'll notify your bank and the county recorder to flag any attempt to move your property. We'll connect you with a victim advocate and adult protective services. We change your locks, someone will be here at 9. We get your phone numbers ported to a secure plan. We put notes on your account so no one authorizes anything without your word and an in-person ID." "And them?" I asked, meaning more than 3 names. "Detectives will dig into the courthouse help your cousin bragged about," she said. "If that's a pattern, you won't be the only one they've tried. Your recordings will matter for them, too." I looked at the place where Marcus had sat. A grease print marked the table where his thumb had rested on the folder's edge. I rubbed it with my sleeve and watched it fade. Monique stood. "I'll see myself out," she said, "but I'll be back in the morning." At the door, she paused. "You don't need to decide anything big tonight," she said, reading a question I hadn't spoken. "Houses hold a lot. Sometimes they hold too much. When you're ready, we'll talk about what you want to keep." After she left, I cleaned the plates. I wrapped the pie. I wiped the table a second time, even though it was already clean. Outside, Miss Jacqueline's porch light glowed steady. My kitchen clock ticked like a small, decent heart. I walked to the mantel and straightened the photo of Marcus in his graduation cap. I didn't turn it down. I didn't put it away. It could sit there and learn what it looked like to tell the truth. I won't lie. I thought victory would feel loud. It felt like quiet, the kind that lets you hear yourself think. There were still questions. Where would I live? Who would I be if the house wasn't a burden I carried every step? How do you forgive a son without handing him the keys again? None of those had to be answered before I slept. I turned off the lights. In the dark, the house no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a room I could walk out of when I chose. And that was the first time in months I set my alarm because I wanted morning, not because I feared it. The night they left, the house went quiet in a new way. Not empty, the kind of quiet that lets you hear your own breath and believe it. People think that's the end of a story. Badges, paperwork, a door closing. It wasn't. That was only the start of me living like my life still belonged to me. Morning came with work. Monique met me at 9 with a locksmith and coffee strong enough to stand on its own. We filed for a protective order before lunchtime, flagged my accounts by afternoon, and put a note at the recorder's office that nothing with my name moved without me standing in front of a clerk with ID in my hand. The detective called 2 days later. Darnell's courthouse help wasn't a ghost. It was a pattern. People whispering the right words in the right ears to hurry papers past tired eyes. My recordings opened doors for them that greed had tried to keep shut. What happened to Marcus? You want to know that? I did too. He called once from a number I didn't know. "Pop," he said, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I'm sorry." I stood in my little kitchen with a dish towel in my hand and felt 2 truths sit down next to me. I love my son, and I don't owe him the keys to my life. "I forgive you," I said. "That means I won't carry this like a blade in my pocket. It doesn't mean you come back here." He cried. I listened. We agreed on one thing. If he wanted to talk again, it would be in a public place during the day, with nothing to sign between us but the check. What about the house? I walked it room by room, touched the walls I'd painted twice and the floorboards I'd replaced when money was lean. Good memories live in wood, but so do the bad ones. One afternoon, I set the photo of Marcus's graduation on the mantel and said out loud, "You can stay. The rest of this can go." I sold the house to a woman with 3 kids and a laugh that filled every corner. She asked if I was sure. I was. Some roofs shelter you for a season, then they teach you how to leave. I moved into Maple Ridge, the community with a porch swing on every building and a calendar full of things I used to tell myself I didn't have time for. First week, a man named Earl handed me a brush in the art room. "Paint what you know," he said. I tried a bus engine, all lines and metal. It turned into a sunrise without asking my permission. On Fridays, I learned the Chicago step with a woman named Ruth who wore red shoes and looked at me like she could see the kid I used to be. I laughed in that room the way I hadn't since my wedding day. It felt like oil hitting the right gear for the first time in years. Monique asked if I would speak at a workshop for older folks and their families. I don't make speeches, not really, but I know how to tell the truth with my hands on the table. I showed them what I did. Phone as notebook, not weapon. Logs with dates and times, not vague feelings. The courage to stall papers you don't understand. The sense to call next door when pride wants you quiet. After, a woman named Irene pressed a trembling hand around mine and said, "I thought I was crazy until you said it out loud." We swapped numbers. I saved her as Irene, call any time. When fear woke her at 2 a.m. a week later, she did. The detective called again, months down the line. "Your files helped," she said. "That little ring? It's not stealing houses this summer." I didn't cheer. I sat on my new balcony with a cup of coffee and let the wind carry a thank you I didn't have words for. Justice doesn't always look like a movie. Sometimes it's a stack of papers that never get signed and a porch light you control. Did Marcus come back? We met once, at a diner off Pont, middle of the day. Nothing to hide us but the steam from our cups. He said sorry again with more detail. I listened and kept my hands flat on the table. He asked, "What do I have to do?" And I told him, "Become the kind of man who wouldn't do it again to anyone, even if I never answer your call." He nodded. That's a long road. I hope he takes it. My love is real. My boundaries are too. I kept one thing from the old house besides the photo, the little sugar canister. It sits on my shelf now, empty by design. Some days I drop a folded note inside, a small gratitude. Ruth's red shoes. Sunrise on canvas. Irene slept through the night. Every month I pour them out like coins and count a kind of wealth I forgot existed when I was busy proving I could carry everything. If you're waiting for a grand lesson, I don't have one. I have something simpler. Dignity is quiet. It's the choice to tell the truth and then keep walking. Forgiveness is a door you open from your side. It doesn't obligate you to invite anyone in. Starting over at 68 is the same as starting over at 28, just with better tools. Patience, good neighbors, a lawyer's number, and the belief that you are worth the trouble. On the wall of the Maple Ridge art room hangs a painting I finished last week. It's a front porch in the blue hour before morning, the chain unhooked, the door open to air that looks like possibility. I called it Free and Clear. People stand in front of it and tilt their heads. Some ask who the house belongs to. I smile and say, to the person who finally decided to live in it. If this story moved you, even a little, do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel, tap like, and leave a comment. We share real stories here about ordinary people with hard roads and sharp turns, and you never know who needs the next one. Your share might be the porch light someone is looking for tonight,